Hit record. What's going on, everybody? I'm so excited to have Sam Rubin on the podcast. Sam Rubin, I met Sam in the Baltimore area comedy scene. Sam, how are you doing?
I am great. It's a beautiful Sunday here in Baltimore.
Yes, it is a beautiful Sunday all the way here in Clarksburg, Maryland as well, Montgomery County. It's imagine the weather is about the same.
Yeah.
All right. So Sam, tell us viewers about what got you into comedy. Tell us your origin story.
It had been something I'd been interested in for a long time. And when I graduated college, I felt like in college you have so much stimulation and you have so much like constant, like there's constantly something to do or somewhere to be or a group of friends to hang out with. And then also with like schoolwork, you have, even though it might not necessarily be the most creative thing ever, there is a sense of creativity, especially in like, I was a communication major and an English major. So I was doing a lot of writing and like coming up with like concepts for like, public relations campaigns and things like that in college. And then that all ended. And I was kind of like dealing with the whole like post grad coming into reality of, being not in college anymore. And one of my roommates at the time was also interested in doing stand-up. So he had done it once or twice. And we were just like going to open mics just to like watch comedy. And after watching a few open mics, I was like, okay, I think I could give this a try. And then I gave it a try and I really enjoyed it and, kind of stuck with it. It's been kind of a part of my life since.
Nice.
I think it. Yeah.
Awesome. So, and you went to College Park as well, right? Maryland?
I did. Yeah. University of Maryland.
Awesome. Same. I graduated 2014.
Okay.
So yeah, so it sounds like you started stand up a couple of years after you graduated. Right?
Yeah. So I graduated in 2017 and then I think I want to say I started, I think it was January 2019 was my first open mic. No, it was January 2018.
Gotcha.
So it was like a couple of months after. It wasn't like too long after. I like needed that creative outlet, and stand up became that creative outlet. And I also started off. I was doing improv and took like an improv class, and just preferred stand up in the long run.
Okay, yeah. Let's lean into your college experience a little bit, because when I was in undergrad, when I was in school, I took a long time to really find my footing, like in social circles. And for me personally, everything kind of came together senior year. But I was always, I don't know, struggling to kind of assimilate to groups and things. So just tell us about like, what was college like for you?
I was definitely a frat boy.
Okay.
That was definitely my thing. Coming into college, didn't think I was going to join Greek life, and then like kind of first semester started going to like tailgates and things and being like, oh, it seems like these people have a lot of fun. And obviously like now I can look back on it and I can be like, yeah, my best friends came from that. But I also see I do have some issues with like the system that was that. But at the same time, that's what gave me my social scene in college. That's what, like I said, gave me some of my best friends in the world, my roommates for all of college and post grad. And I think because of that, I had an immediate network of people because we, were in the same group, the same fraternity. And like, I was super involved on like a leadership perspective of the fraternity, specifically like planning parties. That was like my job in college.
Gotcha.
So there was that. I worked at the Loonies in College Park. So I had friends from that and hung out there a lot, like post work and whatnot. But I would definitely say that like Greek life Greek life was my entire world in college. And I was super obsessed with it until
Gotcha.
basically until senior year when I kind of burnt out and was like, oh, I'm kind of over this.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. No, you mentioned Loonies. I mean, I turned 21 my senior year, and I think I just now realized that that's probably what made everything kind of come together. Because
was Loonies?
Yeah, with Loonies and just being able to go to bars without having to worry about logistics. Yeah, awesome. So would you say your event planning experience is translated to your comedy life now?
Yeah, 100%. I actually like I've always loved event planning. Like even in fucking uh, even in like elementary school, I loved event planning. Like having like birthday parties and stuff. Like I would plan my own thing, and but like in high school, I was really involved in my Jewish youth group, and I planned a bunch of events for that. And then in college, obviously, I planned like I was pretty much planning like 2 or 3 parties every week for like almost a year and a half. Um, and then when I started doing stand up, what I realized was that um, booking events, like booking stand-up shows, is definitely a great way to get your name out there in
Yeah.
in the comedy scene, especially in Baltimore, which is such a small comedy scene that like
Mm,
if you run a successful show and people know that it's a successful show and they want to be on that show, they reach out to you. You're also reaching out to like some of the best comics in the city to be like, hey, I want you on my show.
yeah.
And so for me, booking a show was really fun because I love bringing people together for like fun events, but it was also really great for me from like a I don't want to call it a business perspective because I don't really look at comedy for me personally as like a business,
Mm,
but from like assimilating myself into the Baltimore comedy scene. I think that I started planning. Yeah, so I started doing comedy in January of 2018, and then I started booking a show in November of 2018, and that ran basically up until quarantine. We were doing events at Brewers Cask and Fed Hill,
mm,
and um, and that like the first I would say like 5 6 months of doing that really helped me meet a lot of people. Baltimore, DC, greater comedy community. Um, because I purposely made sure to have new acts every single week. I never
mm.
I seldomly repeated acts. Maybe there were a handful of people here or there, for like special event purposes. But I always wanted it to be fresh because I knew that my whole thing was like building an audience, and I knew that my audience would be regulars, and I didn't want my regulars to see the same act over and over again. So
Right.
so definitely think planning those events in college helped me understand like what would be successful, and also helped me in just like understanding how a PA system works, or
Yeah.
that you want music before and after, and if you and then so in college doing those events definitely translated to maybe not comedy, but comedy
Mhm.
booking for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I really resonate with what you said about keeping the content fresh for like audience members that are friends that tend to see you. And I want to lean into that because the other side to that I guess debate is that some comics I've talked to, they recommend, and I guess this is more from an open miking perspective, but like they recommend like polishing the same bits over and over again, but knowing that the same DMV comics are gonna hear, and
Mhm.
perhaps that takes away from the cadence. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that you develop material and try out. Sorry, I think it's really important that you developed material, but I think it's also important to try new material. So I kind of feel, especially for like open micers, newer people, like even like I'm not new, but I haven't been doing it that long. I still do bits that I've been doing for 2 years. Like
Mm.
I think can we restart? Can you ask me
Yeah,
that
yeah,
question again?
yeah. So what's your take on um, what is your take on keeping material fresh and polishing and refining old material?
Yeah, I think it's really important that you give a joke enough opportunity to see if it's good or not, before just trashing it or putting it in the back pocket and being like, I know this joke is good. Like, you can't tell if a joke is good if you've only told it 5 times. You also can't tell. I mean, you can probably tell if it's bad if you've told it 5 times and get like zero reaction. But like, I've tried bits that I do a handful of times and I throw away and never look at. But
Mm,
I try to always the goal of open mics isn't to make other comics laugh.
mm,
It's to make whatever theoretic audience laugh. And if it's only comics in the audience, that's when things get tough. But in general, it's your goal as a newer comic is to have a tight 5, to have a tight 7, to have a tight 10, to then go on and perform at showcases with. But you can't get that tight 5 unless you do the same material a bunch of times and understand that material and do it in different environments in front of different people, add new tags, change, the cadence of it, add a boom, add a bam,
Right.
So to me, I think what it comes down to me is what's the goal for you as a comic. But in general, if your goal is to develop the tightest 5 minutes that you can, you should always be working on old material while incorporating new material. Something that a Baltimore comic, Maria Sanchez, told me like really early on when like she started helping me with stuff, was like sandwiching, like the sandwich method, where you start with old stuff that works, but maybe change it a little bit, and you end with old stuff that works, but maybe change it a little bit, and then in the middle is where you try new material. And so that's what I try to do, is try to do that sandwich approach. But I always do try to adjust and tweak unless the goal of the mic for me is to just get practice with the exact way I want to say it. So to kind of sum it up, it's like, it really depends on the situation. It really depends on the goal, and it really depends on where you're at in comedy. But I think developing old material and developing new material simultaneously is like, should be the goal.
Definitely. And I want to ask you a couple things about that. What is the sort of type of content that you tend to go to for your sets? Like, is it personal life? Is it topical? Where do you see yourself gravitating towards?
Yeah, I actually like adamantly do not like topical,
Okay.
personally, because there's only so much time frame that a topical joke has. And I'm not telling jokes to hundreds of people to get, I'm telling jokes right now. My personal goals is always to like be building my act and have more and more material. And so topical jokes just die quicker. I do. I love lately. I have been, and I shouldn't say lately because I haven't been doing too much comedy over the past year plus because of COVID. But I do now and have been trying to develop my voice from like a personal standpoint. I'm trying to develop my point of view. I'm trying to tell stories that actually happened, or, hyperbolized versions of stories that actually happened. That's like what I want to do. That's what I want to become better at. I feel like, especially early on, I tended to just go for like goofy, silly one-liner type stuff. But by and large, I felt that like maybe like every other joke, that's giving me too much credit. I try 10 jokes and one of those goofy, zany ones is funny, and then like 8 of them suck, and one of them is just like super hacky. So it's like, I kind of put that on the side, and I still come up with those here and there, but I am really trying to become more personal and be a personal storyteller. Maybe not like that. People say that there's like people who are there's like personal comics, one-liner comics, and then people who like just observational comics. Like Jerry Seinfeld's very much an observational comic. I don't find myself being an observational comic, but sometimes. But finding the balance of all of that is what I'm trying to do. But I definitely think personal storytelling is where I'm trying to go with it.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think that so I mean, yeah, you mentioned this ongoing pandemic. I've been keeping up with like trying to experiment with online content. For example, you connected me with Rizzle. So what have you been up to during this during this downtime?
Yeah, like silly little TikToks here and there. I've done a fair amount, not a fair amount. Like, I'm not like on the Zoom comedy scene like that hard, but I've done, here and there, Mike, once or twice a week. I don't really love, and this is me personally, and it's probably a fault of my own, I don't love Zoom comedy. I recognize the benefit to it, but me personally, like, I do comedy because I really think it's very fun, and a part of the fun for me is like interacting with other comics in person, like, and building
Yeah.
that connection. Whereas like sitting on Zoom and watching people kind of just like tell, they're just it feels more like they're telling jokes as opposed to like being able to react to the audience and things like that.
Right.
I do it because I want to keep my reps up, but I can't wait to be like fully vaccinated and be able to like come
Yeah.
back to do open mics. But yeah, I mean, mostly, like I said, mostly been focusing on little TikToks here and there, and I'm writing a ton. I'm
Nice.
hoping that like when things come back to normal a little bit, I'll just have a bunch of jokes ready to try, ready to build, and maybe just get a fresh 5-10 minute set in real fast. That's the goal, I guess.
Yeah. I've had the same experience. I've been trying to kind of finesse how much time I want to spend on Zoom versus TikToks and like polished videos on YouTube. So I mean, but that's been a fun learning process. Tell us about your writing methods, and do you have a routine? What's that like?
I wish I had a routine. I really do. What I find is I just like, I'll have an idea, it'll come to my head, I'll put it in my notes, and then half the time it'll get written about, and half the time it'll just sit in my notes forever. Like I probably have
Mm,
thousand, I mean, maybe not 1,000, but I might have around 1,000 premises that have never been touched, just sitting on my phone.
mm,
Um, what I've been doing throughout quarantine, which I enjoy, is when I feel like I need to write, I will force myself to sit down and just look at all my premises and whatever and pick a few, and I'll write for an hour. I'll just write, I'll pick the premises and I'll write for an hour. And then usually in an hour I can get like between like 5 and 10 minutes worth of like material. And then I
yeah.
take that 5 or 10 minutes and I read through it a second time, and I like kind of sift through it. And I'm like, okay, I like this. I don't like this. I like this. And I take this big document, and like I've like basically it's like January, February, March free writes where I just like write all these things. And I take that
Mm,
and I put it into a new document. And then those are jokes that I try on Zoom. And if they pass the Zoom test, once things open up, they'll
yeah.
be a part of the repertoire. So that's what I've been doing right now. And I've started reading more books on like how to write, not
Mm.
necessarily comedy, but just like general how to write things. And trying to like go through workbooks on writing. And that's been a kind of a thing for me during this time period as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's yeah. I definitely relate. I don't have a consistent routine, but working at it like margins at a time. Trying
I
to.
feel like you do a fair bit of like you do a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but you definitely do more topical stuff. I feel like you're writing every day.
Yeah, I do more topical stuff. And I think a part of that is, well, I would like to get to a point in life where I can do more personal stuff. The very few personal stuff that I do is personal stuff that's very much removed from me, like from decades ago. Well, I'm in my late 20s, so one decade ago. And so there's not that emotional kind of baggage. And Yeah, I mean, I think that like, I mentioned college earlier. It took me over half of college to really find my footing. The same was true for all of my like grade school. I went to pharmacy school after. So that but I think comedy has helped me um, have structure in my life to really organize my thoughts and sort of experiences and convey
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Well, because yeah, and people think that comedy is this like this art form that's like super just like off the cusp, but in reality, the amount of people who are genuinely off the cusp is very few.
Mm,
Comedy is, there's a setup and there's a punchline, and that punchline is usually something that is not something. It's a shock. It's something unexpected. And while like for like what you were talking about in terms of like giving yourself structure,
yeah.
comedy, though it doesn't necessarily seem very structured, it is structured. It's
Yeah.
1, 2, set up, punchline. And
Yeah.
if you get that aspect of it, and I think that's an issue that a lot of young, I don't want to say young, newer comics, and I consider myself a newer comic. I don't consider myself like anything more. Like I haven't been doing it that long, and I stress that a lot. But
Mhm.
I've been doing it long enough to at least understand that like one of the hardest things for me early on, really early on, was like too much setup,
Mm,
not enough punchline.
mm, yeah,
And you need to cut the fat out on the setup and hit the punchline, and they need to make sense. And there's a
right.
structure there.
Definitely. So last thing I wanted to touch on, really exploring my online virtual footing as this pandemic is hopefully winding down. How'd you get in touch with Rizzle? And you want to tell us about Rizzle?
Yeah, Rizzle's awesome. I should be doing more work with them. I haven't been as active as I was early on. But with Rizzle, a buddy of mine from college actually, who I went to University of Maryland with, but I had met him pre-University of Maryland. Like I mentioned, I was in a Jewish youth group. He too was in that Jewish youth
Mm,
group. We met at a summer program one year. Um, he is involved in New York comedy. He was working at College Humor for a while,
mm,
and then eventually a few of the people from College Humor ended up not being at College Humor anymore, and a lot of them ended up starting to work at Rizzle. um, Adam, his name's Adam. He reached out to me as what they were calling like, or are calling, Rizzle producers, to help onboard new creators.
mm,
He knows that I'm in comedy now, and I'm a pretty social person. And he reached out to me to start finding creators in the Baltimore and DC comedy scenes. So I did that, and that's kind of how I got involved with them, just through a friend and just you know being around, I guess.
yeah, definitely. No, and I appreciate you getting me in touch with the Rizzle team because that really like um, cascaded into me getting more comfortable with all of these processes, that these electronic processes of editing and writing and producing, all those big fancy words.
Yeah, and you're enjoying the working with Rizzle.
I am, yeah. They're very responsive and they've got a Discord, so lots of communication, which is good. And yeah, having a great time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, you are at Sam Rubin on Instagram. Is that 2 underscores
It
after?
is.
Okay.
I'm impressed that I'm impressed that you got that. The one underscore was taken. Goddamn Sam Rubin.
Yeah, no, I have a little space.
Yeah, I
On my,
noticed. I was impressed.
yeah. What else do you have to plug? Handles and whatnot.
Uh, that is pretty much all of my handles on all socials. I also think it's funny. It kind of looks like a my at on there kind of looks like a Wheel of Fortune, or like a hangman game that's just like missing two letters at the end. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm not, currently not really putting any shows on or being booked on anything because I'm not really doing too much comedy, but all out comedy on Instagram as well. That's my production um, handle that has been kind of inactive. And we'll hopefully be putting on shows starting in June pretty regularly again. So when that comes out, definitely be on the lookout for a lot of shows, open mics, booked shows, whatever. And that'll all be promoted on All Out Comedy, literally all underscore comedy, all underscore out underscore comedy on Instagram.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I'll have All Out Comedies info in the caption as well. Thank you so much, Sam. Really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. This was really fun.